Hey guys, talk about CPOP. Shorted it on a bid pool on the book. Um, this is pretty interesting because we just had a REBN the other day that was a very similar chart to this. And I think I'll do a comparison because somebody in my Discord's like, well, what separates REBN, like avoiding the short on REBN, um, after the market open push versus this, right? COP is like what made me more confident that something like this could work. So we'll do that. We'll focus the video on that. This was a little scary just because I was shorting sub $4 and high day was kind of 10% higher. I was kind of afraid of, REBN replication. So I did take some off at the 350 bids. But luckily this move just went nowhere. This is 1 minute 200, and I was hoping for 5 minute 200, but it just kind of went sideways. But yeah, we'll talk about pre-market action. I came on right around here. This is where I got online, right around here. So at this point, it was walk down, right? Bouncing off the MAs. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll look for maybe there'll be like some type of pre-market long trap push. But then the book and the tape got very interesting. There was a lot of very interesting games that made me hesitate to try to short this here. And then we get an aggressive move in the market open. I called out in my Discord. I was like, I really want to be bearish bias this. Like go into the trade bearish bias. And not really look for the market open. I thought if I looked for the market open long on something that was this extended, because not only is the stock opening near the top of its range, which could be very bearish, but it already made like multiple short squeezes. I always say when going long, the first move's the best move, which usually means like longing something. Well, unless you had some insane read over here, it usually means the volume comes in, we get a 1 minute 20, 1 minute 50 pullback. And this would be, this is the time, once the big volume comes in, after not trading any volume, and we're in the first pullback from the big volume push, that's usually the best time for 1 minute 50, 1 minute 20, 1 minute 50. If it lines up with the book, the volume, all that stuff. But the higher it goes, it tends to be, that's why I was even looking for the short over here. I just didn't get the entry signal I was really looking for. And then I was like, you know what? I'll skip the market open long, which is pretty funny because this dumped at 929. So at 929, we got a dump candle. And we learn that on the opposite end, when a stock tends to push at 928, 929, it could be a long trap and it could dump. And this was the opposite, where it actually dumped at 929. I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to... You could tell by the pre-market volume that it was going to trade high volume. On these stocks that are trading 300, 500, 600,000 shares a minute pre-market, you can pretty much assume it's going to be trading at least 1 million shares a minute, if not 2 million shares a minute, something like that. So wasn't surprised when the big volume came in. Again, wasn't really looking. I was looking at... two trades, TAOP and SGD, for market. I thought the market open long structures on those trades were much better. But I didn't get either of them, right? TOP wasn't good overall. Had a lot of ask on the book. And also was just dumping in the beginning. And the SGD, I just didn't have the... shout out to Mikey Underdog. He longed that thing at like 74 cents at market open, and it went straight to 97. So shout out to Mikey. But yeah, I wanted to be bearish bias. Like I said, we got an aggressive move opening near its highs. Also, an aggressive market open squeeze, right? So we got a lot of aggression, a lot of squeezes, getting pretty extended. Also, we're in a market that, I think a lot of the strength this week came from intraday runners, right? Stocks that were bottomed out. Either stocks that didn't gap in the pre-market at all, or stocks that might have gapped in the pre-market, but they're way, way down by the time market open came along. Those are really the better longs, right, with a lot of continuation. And that's true in most situations, but that's especially true when we have a market of the past couple weeks where stocks are dumping. Gappers are dumping. The biggest gappers are dumping. So until that type of price action changes, we saw back in mid-April, we saw a lot more strength in the market opening. I was just longing all the time just because the market really showed that gappers could have market open pullbacks and big squeezes, right? But now wanted to shift, bearish bias on this name. But I was telling my Discord, I was like, I'm going in the market open. I was like, I'm going to be bearish bias, but I still want to see something. I still want to see an entry, right? An entry based on the chart, based on what we know about squeezes, based on the book, right? So we'll kind of go over that, right? So let's zoom in. Let's start on think or swim here, right? So here's the pre-market action. Here's the first high volume push. Here's the 1 minute 50 pullback, also where VWAP is, follow-up push, right? So nice initial volume coming in, 1 minute 50 and then push, right? And then I was watching over here. I was like, well, 3.3 seems to be the level of these lower highs, right? 3.29, 3.1, 3.31. So I was like, when I came on over here, I was like, I'm going to wait for a push above 3.3. And then right over here, they put a 60,000 share ask at 3.3. I was like, oh, they have that. It said on my Discord. I was like, they have that ask right by where the lower highs are, right? And we also learned that manipulated stocks, there's a lot of games. When you start seeing 60,000 share, it could be an ask or a bid, but 60,000 shares, 80,000 shares, 100,000 shares, a lot of times they're doing that to control stock in the way they want, right? Whether it's using a big bid to push a stock up into some ask and then the bid gets pulled, which is what my short entry was, or in this case, it was a big ask at a key level, kind of holding it down, but I really wanted that key level to get pushed. Also, this was getting very grindy, but I was prepared, But as you see right here, when that ask got taken out, it just literally I didn't have a chance to lose on this just because it pushed, it broke the ask and it pushed right away. So, right, so we're going to market open, big aggressive move in the market open, knew the volume was going to be there. Here's that 929 dump and rip. Again, on these high volume stocks, I'm not really looking to short high day clearouts, guess the high a day. This candle was really interesting. Because it pushed a little bit, it swiped every support, pushed back up, and then came back. We'll look at the book on this. But I thought there's some potentially bearish stuff on that candle, but I wanted a kind of a cleaner entry. And then over here, we'll see on the book, this actually dipped to 372 and then came back up to 4. And I was kind of hoping it was going to do a massive soak in the seller because there's a lot of ask at like 410, 415, 420. So I thought it would be like, go here, go to 415, 420, get right below high day, and then pull, right? I was prepared for that, but it stalled at 4 and started pulling back. And I was like, that's not really what I want to see. I like it when that move pushes towards where the asks are, or it even fills some of those asks. Or if a new ask gets put down, it fills those asks. But this wasn't really doing that. So it's like, all right, well, maybe some type of 1 minute 50 long trap. Let me just wait. And then this candle, we'll look at the book. So this candle, they threw up a big bid. They pushed it above 4 again. It was filling some ask. They pulled the bid. And I just decided, hey, that's a decent signal. Let me just try to go in that. So really quick, here's pre-market. Here's that 60,000 share ask right here. They actually moved the ask down. They filled it and then pulled, but this was so fast I didn't get in, right? And I wanted 330 to get broken anyways. But then it was very interesting. They filled the 60,000 share ask. They pulled it down. It didn't break the key level I wanted. And then I saw this happen. And then I saw the bids following it up. And I should have longed it. I should have just threw some on here. But I don't know. I thought that book, the bids following up were okay. But then they started kind of thinning out. And I thought it might, roll over. And what should I do? And I ended up just squeezing straight up. So I just missed the pre-market long. Here's your classic market open long bid structure, right? Go back to my INVO video that I did last month. Similar thing, big gapper, high volume. You could see the bid stacks, massive big stacks, huge rotation. I was just looking at other tickers. Like I said, I was trying to be bearish on this name. And then now we got, more volume. We got new highs. We got a million bids. I was like, wow, there's a ton of bids on this thing. And then there's a ton of ask up here. I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen. And then, I'm not going to short into this push because I'm like, oh, there's like 16,000 bids here. So it's like, oh, it pulls down. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like maybe I'll wait for something later, right? You don't chase. You don't chase. Either my recommendation on low floats is unless you're going to be a wide risk person, which is nothing wrong with that. There's people who make money trading 50% risk, 100% risk, and all that stuff. But it's not what I do. And when I see massive dumps like this through a bunch of bids, I'm not going to chase. And then they did this crazy thing, right? Took out all the bids, and then they took out all the ask. Look at this. Ask. All those asks got filled, and then they pulled that. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. They did this one big aggressive swipe move that filled all these asks, and they pulled it down. So I was like, you see that on high day clearouts, right? You see high day clearouts that end up working, have some type of painted level, usually with many, many layers of asks that get filled and pulled. But I absolutely did not have the read on this. Like, this was so, you could see the volatility right here. This went from 4.3 to 3.8, super quick. It was barely up here. So I wasn't short there. Then they started stacking some big bids. I was like, oh, maybe it's a high day cloud short trap. But again, the reason I don't want to be long biased is because of the structure of the chart, right? So I've been talking a lot about this in my Discord. I was like, you know what? I think a major area for improvement for me, right, trying to always improve my trading, is really understand that on extended tickers with multiple short squeezes like this, with multiple bearish factors, right, opening near the top of its range, multiple short squeezes, a market where a lot of the biggest gappers are fading, right? There's enough bearish factors for me to not want to chase this long, right? Just because of how extended the chart is, right? Maybe if we're in a different market where things are just pushing 500% every day, especially on gappers, maybe you can change your mentality of longing short traps on stocks up 200%, and stuff like that. But if the market's not telling us to do that, then we shouldn't do it. But so anyways, a bunch of bids came in. I'm like, well, I don't really want to long up here, so I want to look for the short. I saw this dump, and when I saw this dump through these bids, I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if they swiped these bids and then pushed into these ask right up here, and then I can make a read, right? Big support crack in the seller. But then it topped kind of too early, right, in the low fours, and started to come back. I was like, oh man. And then this is my short over here. So I was still watching this, and I was still pretty bearish. I was like, well, there's a lot of ask following it down. This high day clear out was interesting. And then yeah, this is the classic. Like, here's the $4 ask. Here's a, what size is this bid? That is a 40,000 share bid that they used to prop this up. And right as they filled the ask, I saw the bid get pulled, and I insta shorted this. So that was my short. But there's some risk. There's always some risk in that. Sometimes on these long trap pushes, because that's kind of like your classic long trap bookmap signal, especially on extended tickers, is pulling a bid on a push when a stock is still near its highs, right? But what's not as good about this is, especially in a stronger market, a lot of times these initial long trap candles become lower highs for later, right? So there's always that risk. So when I saw them walk it down. So you see an ask here, see this, especially here. Ask pushing it down, ask pushing it down, and then they pulled the ask, and this was right where that 350 level was. And again, this is, manipulators love to swipe. Look, they swiped 3.5 by a few cents and aggressively initiated this. So I wanted to take, I took some off before this even happened, but because they pulled the ask here. But I was like, well, that would be where a manipulator might squeeze a stock, swipe support and push, right? But I was like, I already have my average from up here. I took some off as a buffer. I was looking up here as my risk, 415s. And then, what really matters on these pushes is the bid support, right? This is why, say you decided to big brain long this off of the three. Say your whole thesis is, oh man, I go to 350 swipe and rotate it. Let's say you have that thinking, and you long on the reclaim here, right, in the low 350s, and it starts squeezing. You're going to feel great. You're like, oh man, look at all the buying come in and more buying come in. But especially on these tickers that have already squeezed 2, 3, 4 times, especially in this type of market, if you are long, you gotta watch bids, man. You gotta watch bids, and you gotta watch the asks getting filled, right? Because this is a very bearish thing. Like asks getting filled on pushes with no bid follow up is on extended tickers can be very bearish, right? So yeah, I mean, I was watching this. I was like, oh man, this got all the way to like the high 380s. I'm like, man, am I gonna get REBN squeezed? And then I look over, and like a minute later, it's cracking lows and going down. I was like, well, great. And I'm pretty confident that this is bearish now. And yeah, and then that's the end of the trade. But I do want to go over REBN. So let's go over that chart super quick. Shout out to anyone who stayed this long in the video. You guys are the real heroes here. Right? Because REBN had a similar thing where it was a gapper opening near the top of its range, short squeeze, and then followed by another push. Now, the way I would trade this, is I saw this candle in real time, but I didn't trade this candle, right? This is kind of like I mentioned previously. Like, look at this: high day clear out, 1 minute 20 soak push. I miss this trade. I miss all this trade. I miss every trade on this, because I think. Oh, because shares were expensive for the short, and I missed. Oh, my Thinkorswim platform wasn't working at market open, so I missed this whole trade. But I want to focus on this consolidation right here, and I'm going to compare it to CPOP, right? So, stock trading 3 million shares a minute, making new highs, doing all this crazy stuff. And usually when stuff like this happens, I like to wait. If it's in this market open area, I like to wait like 10, 15 minutes at least, just to see what the higher lows are looking like, what the MAs are looking like, and try to make a read on something like this candle, right? So why didn't I have shares, so I guess that saved me, but why I wouldn't have shorted this candle anyways because of the book, right? So why is this not as good as CPOP, right? So, first of all, good example of how the 1 minute 20 here doesn't work here, right? It worked here. Look at big soak, big push, didn't work here, right? So the higher something squeezes, the more likely, especially if we're getting past that initial, market open push, the MA follow up is less likely to work. So definitely would not be looking. Long here makes sense. High day cloud short trap. 1 minute 20 push, especially they had a bunch of bids stacked right here. But this, not as good, right? So let's go to the book real fast. Let's focus on that 955 candle, right? So this was insane. You could actually see it on the book. This was like, look how volatile this was. These candles, these red lines, and these red lines going up. This is a stock jumping up and down 10%. In under a second, right? So you have this crazy whippy, and when I see crazy whippy volatility like this, where the book is kind of empty on both sides and it's just going crazy up and down, up and down, up and down, I never try to make a read there. It's just too easy to get caught, too easy to chase, that type of thing. So now a high day is set in. We're starting to get some consolidation, right? So here's this 350 level that's being defended, like 350 support that's being defended, right? Or I should say 345. And I was thinking, I was like, man, if I had shares, what would be a really nice short here would be if if it pushed into these ask and pull, because I'm still watching it, right? I'm still interested to see what it does, because you can see the bids down here. It had like 25 layers of bids, and it had these ask up here. So I was like, oh, well, if we go back to Thinkorswim, it's kind of like these painted lower highs, right? Maybe it pushes back towards 4. Maybe it does some, 1 minute 20 higher low long trappy push, fills those ask and pulls. I was just watching it, right? But it didn't do that at all, right? It came up to those ask, had no bid follow up, and pulled. So in my mind, just again, getting back to my the pre-market action on CPOP, a lot of times if my thesis is I'm going to wait for these levels and these asks to get filled, and it doesn't get filled, I just miss it. And this is why I miss a lot of trades. I'll miss trades because I'm waiting for key levels and key things to happen that don't happen, right? But sometimes, I didn't have shares here, but sometimes it saves me, right? Like CPOP, this pre-market, saved me from chasing a play that didn't break my levels, right? So, yeah, I started doing crazy stuff. I did this like big soak into this push, and I could see the thesis behind shorting some type of stall up here, right? Yeah, you got a big dump in the initiation into some sellers. So I wouldn't blame people. I wouldn't really blame anyone for shorting this. And it rolled over and cracked these. Remember that 345 support? It rolled over and cracked it. It just so happened that this is, if you have a thesis that this is a long trap and this is going to roll over, then I mean, you got to be prepared for this type of price action. And remember, we had these painted lower highs at 380. They had this big ask at 380, and look, they just ride. Again, it was doing crazy whippy stuff, but I thought this was interesting. I mentioned this in my Discord where it filled these asks, and I'm like, oh, usually you would expect it if this was a long trap push, it would with minimal bid follow up, it should fall down. But then it started going sideways for a couple minutes, and then some bids started showing up, and I was like, that's really interesting. But I didn't long it because I felt the bids weren't super thick, and I was like, oh man, the bids are at like 350, and I have to long at 375, and I just missed that. I just missed that play. But yeah, once 380 gets broken, that's the danger, right? Whenever you get these clear out candles that make another lower high, there's always that danger, right? Especially when it's these big red volume, very short bait candles that could get pushed back up. And then they dumped it straight down only. So pretty interesting. Oh yeah, this is an interesting play. We call this out in Discord. Look at this. Bid prop on the 1 minute 200. All these lower highs at 340. And then you got VWAP and 350. So a bunch of liquidity levels. 340, 350 VWAP. Aggressive push. Swipes 350. Comes back down, cracks. Classic backside action. And apparently shares became 3 cents a share on this. And I did not know. And the only problem with this is sometimes it's hard to know how far this backside push is going to go because, there's a ton of down only, so there is a lot of empty space you can rotate through, and sometimes you have to guess based on, the book, based on the volume, based on the soak, based on the aggressiveness. Sometimes you have to make judgment calls, so it can be hard to hit these trades. But yeah, unsurprisingly, it came back down to the bottom of the prop, and then it rolled over, right? So anyways, that's it for today. Long video, but I did want to show the difference between, CPOP with that bid getting pulled at the candle I shorted versus REBN where, this didn't really fill any ask to the upside, and it didn't really clear any lower highs that I would and ask on those lower highs that I would be paying attention to. Where CPOP wasn't exactly the best. I would love it if that was at like 415, 420, not 390s or low fours. But I decided to go with it because of the market conditions and the bid getting pulled. So, anyways, that's it for today. Information out below by my Discord if you want to learn about it. And you guys have a good one. See ya.